Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 21 Hats podcast. I'm your host, Loren Feldman. This week, our talk leaps from one plague to another. Floods, power outages, cybercrime, employee churn, supplier price hikes, vanished shipping containers, not to mention the actual plague. For Laura Zander, whose wholesale yarn business keeps falling further behind on its orders, these events have necessitated a series of difficult conversations with customers. They can't get mad about the pandemic, she tells us, and they're not going to get mad about the fact that we're moving, and they're not going to get mad about the fact that there's a deep freeze. But at some point, they're going to get tired, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. It's exhausting. To which she adds, but if the locusts hit, I don't know how much more of this people can take. Plus, we also have a friendly discussion about whether raising your prices makes you a jerk. Spoiler alert, it does not. Even in good times, owning and running a business can be a lonely pursuit. Our hope is that these weekly conversations will, if nothing else, let owners know they are not alone in facing challenges. Same thing with our daily newsletter, the 21 Hats Morning Report, which highlights the most important news of the day for business owners, and which you can subscribe to at 21hats.com, where you can also find transcripts of our podcast episodes and lots of other articles and interviews. Joining us this week are regulars Paul Downs, who is founder and CEO of Paul Downs Cabinet Makers, which is based outside of Philadelphia and makes custom conference tables. William Vanderbloemen, who is CEO of Vanderbloemen Search Group, a recruiting firm based in Houston that works with churches and other faith-based organizations. And Laura Zander, who is CEO of Jimmy Bean's Wool, a digital yarn store that is based in Reno, Nevada, and Madeline Tosh, a wholesale yarn supplier in Fort Worth, Texas. The episode is titled, God, Loren, you are such a jerk. Before we get started, one of the recurring themes of this podcast is that marketing is hard for smaller businesses. One reason it's hard is that we are all besieged by self-appointed digital marketing gurus who overwhelm us with outlandish promises. On the other hand, there's Steve Krull, co-founder of Be Found Online. A loyal listener to the 21 Hats podcast, Steve understands the business owners who listen to this podcast because he is one. He knows his stuff, but he's also a real person who you can have a real conversation with. And if you tell him I sent you, you can get a free consultation with Steve himself. Just shoot him an email at steve@befoundonline.com to schedule your talk. That's steve@befoundonline.com. Now on to the show. Welcome, Paul, William, and Laura. Hope you guys are all doing well. We've got some catching up to do, especially with you, William. It's been a while. Has anything interesting happened in Texas since the last time we spoke?
It's been more than a little interesting, but the big thing that we have been experiencing in my little sector of executive search, where we're helping people with their finding the right talent, right? About November or December, I started shouting from every mountaintop I could find and through every megaphone.
Including this one,
that there would be a job churn. And man alive, have we seen that. We've been busier than ever for all the different reasons that I had listed. So I don't know how long that will last, but it doesn't appear to be something that is a flash in the pan.
Are you seeing that at all the different levels, or is there a regional pattern, or is it just like the dam just opened?
Well, it's all the things. I don't want to retread old ground, but some of it is hires that were being put off. Some of it is people would have left their job in 2020, but they stayed. Some of it is new jobs that are lower down the org chart and highly technical because everybody's live streaming now and everybody's, got video channels running through their schools or their nonprofits or their churches. So some of it is succession has sped up. People are like, this has changed. And my team needs a new leader. So it's just all those things all at once. And I think there's some measure of optimism that from our clients that, we're not out of the woods yet and we got to be careful, but boy, it looks a lot better than it did 6 months ago.
Well, that's probably going to lead into Lauren's next topic at some point about Texas and optimism and not having any mandates anymore, right, Loren?
Thank you, Laura. Let's go there right now. William, one of the reasons we haven't spoken to you in a while is because for a couple of weeks there, as I understand it, there was no electrical power in the state of Texas. How did that affect you?
We got out probably better than we should have. We were without power for 72 hours, I guess. But we have natural gas fireplaces, and even as cold as it got, the inside of our house didn't dip below 50. So we bundled up and taught the kids card games, and we had that horrible Harvey, the storm in 2017. So Adrian we probably had a dozen LED lanterns around the house as a result of that. And we had plenty of light and plenty of heat. And I made all kinds of new things on my charcoal grill. I have one of those big green eggs. I made cornbread. I made breakfast. So we kind of made the best lemonade we could. We didn't have any water damage. Our pipes are fairly new, so the materials held a little better. But there was some real damage, and it was such a train wreck of errors. There's just, I think everybody on every part of the political spectrum has legitimately said, yeah, part of this is our fault. Like the finger pointing is kind of pointless because it was a mess all over. It was a calcified, nasty, old, antiquated system compounded by a once in 100-year, blizzard storm. So every county in the state of Texas got winter weather. That's like Texas is bigger than France. So it was pretty amazing.
It may have been a once in 100-year storm, but one of the things that kind of perplexed those of us who don't live in Texas is that it isn't the first time this has happened. That apparently, I had forgotten this, but something similar happened about 10 years ago, and there was a lot of talk, but not a lot of action afterwards. Do I have that right?
Well, that's easy to say from a distance, Loren.
Yes, it is.
10 years ago was nothing like this. I was here 10 years ago, and yeah, okay, we lost power for a little while, but it wasn't like this. This was a different, I don't know if any of you guys have seen the movie The Perfect Storm, where all three things happen at once, and it's just too bad for George Clooney and his crew. It was kind of that. And, there's some who want to point the finger at, well, if y'all were not deregulated then, but I think the cooler heads of all ends of the political spectrum are like, yeah, we need to refresh the system. This needs to be upgraded. And, I don't know that there's one easy answer of if we were regulated or deregulated or this and such, but this was far worse. Now, what's interesting is since 2017, we've had 3 500-year flood events in Houston and now a 100-year winter event in Houston. So I don't know when the locusts and frogs and other forms of pestilence show up.
We just had Passover.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Laura, you have an operation in Texas as well, as we've discussed frequently. How hard were you hit by this?
We were hit super hard. I mean, we were basically out of business for a week and a half, I guess. So lost all that revenue. In fact, What exactly happened? Did you lose power? Were you flooded? We were flooded. And then a number of our employees couldn't get to work, or, quite a few of them lost power for 10 days, 7 to 10 days. So yeah, but then we got flooded. So right at the beginning of that first week. And then it just took, forever. And my team is so good that they spent the time, they didn't want to wait for somebody to come clean it all up. So they just cleaned it up themselves, so that we could get back to work sooner rather than later. But yeah, no, we're just now finally starting to get back into the flow, and having a new normal. But yeah, I mean, insurance claims, I just got yesterday, talked to the insurance guy, and, hopefully we'll be kind of our insurance is going to kick in, and will help cover some of the loss that we had. So that's helpful. I mean, I think that's the first time. I mean, it's the first claim in 19 years that we've ever made. So that was a new experience for us. And we had just moved in, right? We had just moved in like 2 weeks prior, 2 or 3 weeks prior. I mean, it was something crazy.
Was there a lot of damage from the flooding?
There was a fair amount of damage. Yeah, I mean, all the baseboards, it was probably a couple inches high. So all the baseboards will have to be replaced. The ceiling, it came from the sprinkler system in the ceiling. So the ceiling tiles had to be replaced. We had boxes and boxes of yarn, both undyed and dyed yarn, that all got damaged. And then we had tons of bookshelves. And then it went into the offices, and so steam cleaning all the offices. And so it could have been much worse, but it wasn't great.
William, did it have an impact on you from a business standpoint?
Not really. We had, a few people without power. What was interesting is once the power went out through most of the state, your ability to text was almost nothing. I don't know if you experienced that, Laura, but I think every teenager in Houston was streaming Netflix over their cell signal, and it swallowed up.
Oh, right.
That was the biggest pain, was we couldn't send or receive email in any form or fashion, or texts. And so, we had this ridiculous responsiveness, as you guys have heard me say before, is one of our values. So it was pretty hard to live that out. But that passed after a few days, and people across the country were incredibly gracious about no worries. I saw on the news, you guys, da-da-da-da. So it was a hiccup, but nothing like the interruption that last March was.
Yeah. I think for us, it's like you said, the ridiculous responsiveness. We have been trying, for the last 15 months to build this brand back up and kind of build back up trust. And delivery has always been one of the issues, that we just can't dye the yarn and dry it and label it and do everything that we need to do to send it out fast enough. So we've been trying to, get better and better and better and better at that. And you throw the pandemic in there, and so we're not being as responsive as we could be or as we want to be. And then we move, which, of course, if you can imagine moving a factory and having to build it all up and blah, blah, blah. So we're losing time there. And then to get hit with this, I mean, it's just, how much more patient can customers be? And, they can't get mad about the pandemic, and they're not going to get mad about the fact that we're moving, and they're not going to get mad about the fact that there's a deep freeze, but at some point they're going to get tired, whether it's like consciously or subconsciously. So that's kind of, I don't know, it's exhausting. It's really exhausting.
Are you communicating with them?
Absolutely. And that's the big difference. I mean, when this hit, we sent an email out to everybody immediately. And we're like, look, guys, this is the deal. We got flooded. We're doing, we're fixing it as fast as we possibly can, but it's going to put us 2 weeks behind, and we were already kind of behind. I mean, we're already booked up through the end of this year. And so we had to put a stop to taking new orders and taking new accounts. And because we've just got to be able to catch up and train these new people that we've hired 10 new people in the last 3 weeks, since this happened.
Wow.
To try to catch back up. But then there's a training period, and there's a learning curve. And, so, and the feedback we're getting is, like William said, customers are understanding and they are appreciative of the communication, but if the locusts hit, I don't know, how much more of this can people take?
Laura, how did that hiring go? That's a lot of people to hire quickly.
It is. It went really well. I mean, one of the reasons that we moved to the location that we're in now is because it's more centrally located to, the labor pool, if you will. And we've been treating people really well. So we've got people coming in all the time, looking for jobs, just all the time. So it actually has worked out pretty well.
That's nice.
What's the skill level required to make someone into a useful employee for you?
It's just reliable. We're pretty reliable, relatively smart, but not a tremendous amount of skill because we have so many different positions to fill. You could do something as simple as putting labels. It's very factory. And then there's more complicated stuff. So my approach has always been, if somebody seems like they're a good person, and if they're reliable and they're not going to cause a lot of drama, then we can find a place. If they fit with the culture, we'll find something for people to do. And then we kind of, we bring them in and after a month or so, we really figure out where the best fit is for them.
Before we move on, William, I want to go back to the deregulation issue a little bit. One of the things that I think those of us not in Texas were surprised to learn was that studies show that since deregulation, the price of electricity had gone up dramatically in Texas, even before the storm, leaving aside what just happened. Is that your understanding as well?
I think it depends on how hard you work at it, Loren. I've got a good friend who's with a fairly new company, is maybe 5-6 years old, called Energy Ogre. And basically it's a company that built an algorithm that shops electricity rates for you on a daily basis. And then it calculates, what's the cancellation fee for getting out of whatever contract you're in, and does it save you money to switch or not? And so last year we probably switched providers 8 times, all because the algorithm did it for us. And our power bill is as good as it's ever been.
Ooh.
One of the things we heard about was that there was a variable rate and people with the variable rate were going to get socked with huge bills. Is this a variable rate situation you're describing or something different?
Well, you don't have to do variable rate here, but we choose variable rate, and then we don't do it because we sit and watch the rates every day. We do it because we hired a software company that watches the rates every day and makes the adjustments. So I think they had 1 or 2 hiccups, like 1 or 2 providers in particular that took advantage of the situation. But for the most part, it worked. Now, if you're just I don't want to pay attention to rates, I don't want to have to think about it, you can always choose a fixed rate for the year and go with it. But I personally like having the choices and the flexibility, and I love the algorithm that's been developed. And I got lower bills than I used to, but that's just me.
And you didn't get hit with a big bill for the period around the storm?
No, it was larger than normal, but, I think that's true for everybody in the state. I don't know that regulation or deregulation would have solved that.
How about you, Laura? Did you get hit with a big bill?
Last I checked in, it didn't seem that huge. I think ours was like $800. But I'm on the Energy Ogre website right now, so I'm going to check that out. Thank you.
It's pretty cool. It's very well done, and they're super smart people. So I think they're in most of the deregulated states now. Oh,
okay. All right, great. Yeah, no, that'll be great, because that's one of the things when we moved into this factory is we built a air-conditioned kitchen. And before it wasn't air conditioned, it was just open air. So we're kind of trying to figure out and see what this is going to look like, in terms of energy usage, because of course it's going to be a lot more expensive.
Those of us not in Texas saw this all happening, and I think we're tempted to think, maybe those folks in Texas are going to realize that not all regulation is terrible, and this is going to change things. I think I'm hearing from you, it's not really going to change anything at all.
What you're hearing from me is my experience. I'm not your prototypical person you just described. I watched the Ken Burns documentary on the Roosevelts, which if anyone listening hasn't watched that, it is just magnificent. And if you're a nothing needs to be regulated kind of person, go watch that. You'll change your mind. But my experience for this particular instance is that the deregulation has been good for my family.
I would like to go back to what you started with, William, with your prediction coming true, the year of COVID churn. Has it affected your company itself? Have you had turnover at your business?
Well, I think part of the reason I was able to have some level of clairvoyance on this was because we already dealt with it. 2 of my 5 lead team people left in 2020. One at the front end of the pandemic, and one after we were through our particular hardest part. But they both had very good reasons and were needed elsewhere, frankly. So losing 40% of your lead team during a pandemic will make you say, I wonder if this is going to happen elsewhere. Since then, we've seen a little bit of it, not a lot. We restructured early. We bet back in March of last year. Our gamble was this is an 18-month problem, not a 2-week problem or whatever it was to flatten the curve. So we made pretty radical adjustments, and the people that have come through that with us, it's almost like we went through something big together, and right now they're staying. Now, that could all change. Who knows?
12 months ago, you guys did a phenomenal job of digging in and educating yourselves on the PPP and on all the government assistance and basically what was going on. And then you graciously shared all that information and did all these webinars and, emails. And how useful was that to the business? Looking back, are you really glad you did it?
Yeah, well, I'm glad we did it because it was the right thing to do. If you're a business owner and you didn't have a moment or two last year where you sat and wondered, I wonder if we're going to make it or not, then I don't know what you eat for breakfast, but I'd like to sign up for that menu because, we were like, I don't know if this is going to work or not. And kind of made the conscious decision, well, if we go down serving. Martin Luther, one of my heroes of Protestantism, said, I'm always at the same time a sinner and a saint. So the saintly part of me is we're doing good, right? The sinner part of me, or the self-centered part of me, would say, if you help people find free money during a pandemic, they're going to remember you on the back end. And that has certainly proven true.
William, I know you guys are really good at tracking things, and you told us that you're busier than ever now because of the churn. Are you able to track to what extent the additional business you're getting is coming from existing clients or new people that you help through the PPP?
Yeah, well, it's a little harder equation than it used to be. But yes, the answer is yes. And when the summer comes, which is usually a time when our world slows down a little, we'll take a more forensic look at it. But what we're big believers in kind of Seth Godin marketing. I'd rather have 1,000 people who are just a tribe that will follow you anywhere than 100,000 people that read your newsletter. And I think whether they were existing clients that we did some work for or someone that never heard from us, our service was well received and has led to, I'm not getting questions for competitive bids this year. I can tell you that from a just feel, not statistical, but people aren't saying, well, we need to go get 2 more bids. And they're just like, okay, send the contract.
So have you raised your prices?
God, Loren, you are such a jerk.
The people that call and say, so how cheap can we do this, almost always don't end up being a client. It's just, it doesn't work. So for what we do. But I have to say my gut would tell me we're already seeing return on investment, if you will. And the statistics will bear that out in the summer in a lot of different ways. We got a lot more clients. We were breaking into making concerted efforts to break into schools and nonprofits, and those are all up and to the right. So it's interesting. It's going to be interesting forensics. Every Monday morning, probably more than just Mondays, I do how was this week against the same week last year in about 20 different categories. And I had to have, and we have a software tool that shows me that in a nice red, amber, green sort of thing. And I asked our tech people, can you build one that shows me how we did against 2 years ago? Because it's really not helpful to me right now to see how did we do against this week last year. It makes me feel good because we're 1,400% more busy than we were 12 months ago, but it's not helpful.
I have a question for you. Are churches in general and the organizations you deal with, are they not as strapped as they expected to be? And the context of the question is the federal government released this flood of cash that is now sloshing around the economy. And I'm curious whether it ended up being donated to churches. Like where I could see it's going into the stock market, into housing prices, but where else is it ending up?
I don't know the answer to the money the government's releasing, but I think on average for our clients, which may or may not be a fair random sampling of all churches, right? But for our clients, they all finished with about 95% of the giving that they had the year before. Now, the other little secret is their operating expenses were much, much, much lower. They had no heating and air conditioning from March through December. Buildings were shut down, even down to like custodial services. So when you do 95% of your revenue and then your operating expenses are lower, it was a much better year than they had thought when this whole thing kicked off. I think the thing they're holding their breath on more than I had expected is, what does this look like long term?
So, Laura, I got to go back to you. You think I'm a jerk because I suggested raising prices?
I think you're taking Jay's place today.
Maybe you need to look at your prices. When was the last time you raised your prices?
Years ago. We're looking at raising them this year.
Wow, what a jerk, Laura.
No, but you can't build a bunch of trust and do all that. But I know you were just joking. We had a price increase on the table last January. And then we actually, or maybe it was last March. And then, of course, when COVID hit, we're like, okay, forget it. We won't do this. This is on the manufacturing side, on the wholesale side. So we are going to raise the prices in 2022. So we'll just go ahead and release that plan and give people plenty of time to kind of adjust to it. Yeah, but I'm seeing, our suppliers, I just got an email today from one of our major suppliers that says we're increasing prices 5%. People are going to start doing it across the board. So many people got hit so hard, that you'll see these little teeny price increases.
I'm starting to hear from a lot of people that the prices are already going up across the board.
Yeah, totally. Well, I was just going to say, the freight, oh my God, just shipping. And we're missing an entire season. We missed an entire season for one of our brands on the Jimmy Bean side. We make handbags because we simply couldn't get it. We still have a container that is sitting
in the Suez Canal.
We have a container that we still do not know if it's at the bottom of the ocean or if it is on this ship. I think the ship maybe now is in like Alaska or something. It was supposed to have landed in December, and then, 40% of the containers fell off the ship.
Wow.
Out of however many 20,000 containers, they haven't gone through all of them. So we don't know if we just lost everything. We don't know when it's going to get here, but, that's a ton of stuff that we can't sell. So we basically missed a whole season.
My friends that are in construction are just amazed at price increases. Lumber is like 3x what it was 12 months ago. You can't find the cans that ceiling lights go in, like the little circles, you just can't get those. They're stuck on freighters. So I'm hearing the same sort of thing.
All right, we're running short of time. There are a couple of things I want to make sure we catch up on. One is with you, Paul. You were on the show last week and you told us about the cyber crime that you had experienced, where payments from a client had been diverted, never reached you, went to an elderly woman in Texas. Can you give us an update? Has anything been resolved with that?
I had what I would call a very unsatisfactory response with the owner of the company who got stolen from at the very beginning of the episode.
This is your client tried to make payments and those payments were diverted without ever reaching you.
Something happened in her accounting department that allowed these things to get diverted. And when I told her about it, I don't know whether I was the first one or not, but she basically said, "Oh, this must have been you." And then we were cooperating with the bank that had received the payments in Texas. And so the fraud officer there was keeping me informed as everything happened, and it was clearly not us. The money never got into our accounts. And we did a review with my cybersecurity consultants to make sure that no emails had been sent to that client that we could identify that directed any change in the banking information. So after all that, I hired a lawyer and wrote a letter to her, had the lawyer write a letter that said basically, here's all the facts, and this is your responsibility. And then heard nothing for another week. And then I shot her an email on Monday just saying, "Can you please give me an update where you are with this? You owe me $140,000. And she said, "We will send you one check tomorrow, overnight." And she did a handwritten check for one of the payments, the smaller one, $25,000. And basically saying that she had to be quiet because I had engaged a lawyer. So I'm still into her for $118,000. She wants me to continue producing the work that she had sent POs for. And she's blaming me for getting a lawyer. And I'm pretty disgusted with her, I would say. But I'm not in a situation where I can just terminate the relationship. Although in my angry mode, that's what I feel like doing, because life is too short to do business with people that aren't good partners. That's my feeling.
What do you see happening next?
I think I'm going to wait a good long while before I see the other payment, the $118, which is money she owes me for work that was completed. And I am going to have to make a decision about how I deal with the work that we are under contract to do. And I believe what I'm going to do is grit my teeth and complete it and hope for the best. And if I don't see any of the $118,000 for another month or so, I'm going to be pretty disgusted, because I happen to know from the Texas bank that at least half of that was already returned. And the situation, as far as I can tell, is it's most likely that my payments weren't the only ones, and that this person got a pretty big shock when a bunch of her money disappeared. And I would guess she's scrambling for cash and just trying to juggle her all the people she owes money to and all the other people who got ripped off. And that's not a good place to be, but I think she could have dealt with it in a way that made me more sympathetic to her rather than less.
Paul, do you know the value of the work you have in process for her, and do you know when it's due to her?
Yeah, it's about $60,000 worth of stuff, and there's a small piece of it that's due at the end of April, and there's a larger piece which is due at the end of June. And she said, "I want an update on when you're going to deliver all that stuff. I don't want it to be delayed, blah, 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 blah." I mean, she was just, it was terrible. It was a terrible interaction. And just by email, too. She's like, "Well, my lawyer has said since you engaged counsel, I can't communicate with you anymore." It was pretty bad.
So are you debating whether you actually send those goods to her?
I'm going to do it because I'm going to do the right thing. She issued a PO. She paid me the deposit on that. And I am not going to get into a tit for tat yet. I feel like once I enter full combat with this woman, it's going to be very ugly for everybody involved. And I'm going to give her some time to hopefully get an insurance claim or whatever she's working on, and see if she can clear her books with me. There's a scorched earth strategy available to me, which is to go around her to the ultimate client and say, "Hey, did you know this happened to someone you're trusting?" And that would be bad for everybody, but it would certainly sink her boat. And I don't really want to do that yet.
Okay, the other thing I wanted to follow up on is with you, Laura. I think the last time William was on, we spent a lot of time talking about your situation with your husband, Doug, and a co-founder who's interested in stepping away from the business. And one of the issues that came up is how you replace him, who you hire, how you find a really good engineer to take over, especially given that he's built the platform that you operate your company on and is really the only person who knows how to make it work. Can you give us an update? What's happened in the weeks since?
Sure. In the week since,
or months since, actually.
Yeah, in the month since. We are going to try and just look around ourselves and see kind of what's out there, given all of the churn that's happening right now and given the number of people that are moving to Reno from the Bay Area. So I have my head of social media and marketing. She used to work in the Bay Area and she worked for a startup. And then our head of HR, they are working together and working with Doug, and they're just going to cast a net out for different levels of engineers. So not necessarily, executive level, definitely not executive level. And we're just going to see what's out there for just a little while. So that's kind of where we're at right now. They're kind of interviewing Doug. I gave them a whole list of questions and, job positions, and we want to be really flexible and see what's available. And then we'll kind of gather that information and see where to go from there.
So you haven't made a decision as to whether you want to hire someone who walks in capable of taking on Doug's role, or someone that he would have to train over a period of time?
Yes. Yeah. We realize even if we were to do that, we'd still need a couple of experienced engineers. So we're going to try and fill in from the bottom up a little bit. Like I said, we've got 2 people that are on his team right now, and they're very beginner. Like Doug is teaching them how to code. So we're going to see who's out there that's maybe 1 level above that, and who's out there that's maybe 2 levels above that.
And have you made a decision on whether you will stick with the home-built platform that Doug created over, I think, 18 years?
Yes, we did. And actually, the conversation that I've had with William and with Karen as well really sparked, a lot of conversation with Doug and I. And one of the things that we realized or decided on is Doug is spending the next 6 months or so working on an API so that we can start. We do believe our system is a really great system for what we do. And it's very customizable. But obviously the issue is maintenance, and adding new features is a problem. So what he's going to do is he's building an API so that we can start to kind of outsource new features and have somebody else maintain new things that come out, and maybe start to kind of part out the whole thing and slowly replace the whole thing instead of trying to do it all at once.
Tell us what an API is for those of us who haven't gone down that road.
An application programming interface. So it's, how like with Shopify, or I'm trying to think what it was in the beginning, like the App Store.
So the point is that you could bolt something on that you wouldn't continue to build from scratch.
Yep. And then people could bolt stuff on in their language of choice. And they would just have access to our backend, so to the database structure and to the logic. And where Doug really, really excels is in the logic part of things.
So is he okay hanging in there for a while?
Yes.
He doesn't have a choice. Is that what you're going to say?
Yeah, he doesn't have a choice.
All right, guys. I think that about does it for today. My thanks to Paul Downs, William Vanderbloemen, and Laura Zander. As always, thanks for sharing, guys. Wait, don't leave yet. If you have a question or a comment that you'd like the 21 Hats owners to address, send it to me by replying to your morning report or by email at loren@21hats.com. That's LOREN@21hats.com. Do it now before you forget. And don't be afraid to tell Jay what you really think. He can take it. And if you got something out of this conversation, help us reach more business owners. Tell a friend. Subscribe and review us wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Twitter. Subscribe to the Morning Report at 21hats.com. This episode was produced by Jess Thuberon, founder of Blank Word Productions. Okay, now you can leave. Thanks for listening, everyone.